I would like to call the Monday, December 9th, 2019 meeting of the Blue Springs Planning Commission to order. If I could ask everyone to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome this evening to everyone, as well as those of you watching from home. I will run through the agenda real quick. First item will be the consent agenda. Second item is a public hearing for a planned unit development concept plan for convenience store and gas station on Napoleon Drive. Item 3 will be a public hearing for a conditional use permit for the Food Mart. Item 4 is going to be continued to our December 30th meeting. Item 5 will be a public hearing for rezoning of Cambridge Park. Item 6 will be a public hearing for the preliminary plat for Cambridge Park. Item 7 will be other business, and then item 8 will be adjournment. With that, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Banks, a second from Commissioner Peel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Before I get into public hearings, I'm going to just run through procedures real quick since we have quite a few people in the audience this evening. I will open the public hearing. I will call for exhibits from our city attorney. Staff will make their comments. The applicant will be given an opportunity to make their presentation. I'll ask for witnesses in favor, then ask to hear witnesses that are opposed. I'll have a general question and discussion among the commissioners, and then I'll close the public hearing and we will consider it for a recommendation. So I am going to open the public hearing for items 2 and 3, and we'll hear those together, and then the commissioners will consider those separately. So I'm going to open the public hearing for PUDC 11-19-7129 for Food Mart, as well as the conditional use permit CUP 11-19-7130 for the Food Mart. I would ask for the exhibits from our city attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I offer the following exhibits into the record for PUDC 11-19-7129. Exhibit 1, staff report with attachments. 2, application with attachments. 3, affidavit of publication in the Examiner on November 23, 2019. 4, 185-foot notification map. 5, names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. 6, copy of the letter sent to said property owners. 7, Title IV Land Use Section Blue Springs Code of Ordinances by reference. And 8, 2014 Comprehensive Plan by reference. For the public hearing for CUP 11-19-7130, I offer the following exhibits into the record. 1, staff report with attachments. 2, application with attachments. 3, affidavit of publication in the Examiner on November 23, 2019. 4, 185-foot notification map. 5, names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. 6, copy of the letter sent to said property owners. 7, Title IV Land Use Section Blue Springs Code of Ordinances by reference. And 8, 2014 Comprehensive Plan by reference.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Wright.
All right, thanks, Chairman Graham.
Presentation on both.
Yep. Before this evening are 2 requests related to a Food Mart gas station convenience store at 501 Northeast Napoleon Drive, including a PUD concept and a conditional use permit. The approximate 1.35 acre site is located at the southwest corner of Northeast Adams-Area Parkway and Northeast Napoleon Drive, and is zoned GB PUD ADPO, which is general business with a planned unit development, and it's in the Adams-Area Parkway overlay. This site was previously approved for a gas station in 2009. However, those approvals have expired. The first request this evening is a PUD concept plan to reestablish a concept plan for the site. Since the 2009 approvals have expired, the site reverted back to the 2005 plan, which was developed at the same time with the townhomes to the south and the west. The 2005 plan did not include a site plan or identify a land use for this site, and that is part of the reason why they have to go back through a concept plan tonight. The applicant is proposing the development of a 16-pump gas station and 5,040 square foot convenience store. The site will have 2 points of access from Northeast Napoleon Drive, including a full access on the west side and then an exit only on the east side. The main reason for the exit only on the east side is due to the proximity to the Adams-Berry Parkway intersection. As part of the development process, the developer will be responsible for installing a traffic signal at the intersection of Adams-Berry Parkway and Napoleon Drive, which must be installed and operational prior to occupancy. The site does meet the minimum parking requirements, stacking spaces for the pump islands, and also provided bike parking. However, the applicant is requesting a few modifications from the underlying GB zoning district, including a reduction in the rear yard setback from 25 feet to 15 feet to allow the south side of the building to be constructed closer to the rear property line, a reduction in the pedestrian access adjacent to the front building entrance, which is required 12 feet for commercial buildings. They're requesting to reduce that to 8 feet, and also a slight reduction in the overall open space requirement for Adams-Berry Parkway overlay, which is required at 40%. They are requesting to install 38.32% of open space. Staff does believe that the requested modifications are warranted for the site, and in lieu of these modifications, the applicant is increasing the overall site landscaping by 10% and is providing additional pedestrian connection to the Adams-Berry Parkway hike-bike trail, as well as outdoor seating. Conceptual building elevations have been provided and included in the packet, which does show a single-story building with four-sided architecture. Building is predominantly masonry with a mix of brick, cast stone, and ephes, and also includes a metal cornice and metal awnings. The front of the building has increased transparency and also has the appearance of a two-story building from the front with the added height. The proposed gas canopy does include masonry columns and a metal fascia to complement the building design. A conceptual landscape plan has also been provided. Additional plant units will be needed in some areas to meet the landscaping requirements. And as noted, staff does recommend a 10% increase in the overall site landscaping to offset the slight decrease in open space. Staff does recommend that those additional 10% of the units be installed within the 50-foot Adams-Berry Parkway buffer. There are a total of 523 plant units that will be required. Landscape buffers are also provided adjacent to the townhomes to the south and the west, and they will also be installing a 6-foot wood privacy fence. A terrace frontage is required along Napoleon, which is a minimum of 10 feet, and does require street trees and a continuous hedge to screen the street right away from parking and access drives. Staff does believe that the PUD concept plan represents an improvement from the 2009 approval, with improved site circulation compared to the 2009 approval, which only had 1 point of access at that time. Lastly, the second request is for a conditional use permit to permit a gas station and a convenience store in the Adams-Berry Parkway overlay. Both of those uses do require a CUP within the overlay. There are 5 special use standards for gas stations, of which responses to each have been included in the staff report. The applicant is proposing hours of operation to be 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. The convenience store will sell alcoholic beverages and grocery items. Prepared food may also be sold for consumption, and an ATM will also be provided. Auto repair and car washing services will not be provided on site. However, as a landscape buffer and fence are already provided, staff does not believe that additional buffering is needed between the site and the adjacent townhomes, as screening of headlights has already been addressed through the fence and the landscaping. Based upon the review of the application, submitted plans, and the review criteria for each application, staff does recommend approval of the PUD concept plan with 6 conditions and the conditional use permit with 4 conditions. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wright? Oh, don't look like it. Would the applicant like to come forward and make their presentation? I need you to be sworn in and state your name.
Raise your hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
You can name the address.
Todd Wetherill, 6344 Ash Street, Prairie Village, Kansas. And I'm with Ideas Architects.
Thank you.
So, as far as the presentation is concerned, we prepared this PowerPoint, which just goes through the conceptual elevations of the project. So Matt, if you want to just go ahead and advance. Matt's already covered most of the basics of what we're trying to accomplish here, and as we're aware, this convenience store has been proposed on this site in the past, and so this seems to be a compatible use with the Adams Dairy Parkway corridor, and we're excited about the opportunity to see this project realized. We've been working closely with staff to work out any particular concerns as he's addressed some of the variances that we're asking for, and we're being able to compensate with additional landscaping, et cetera, to make those things possible. I would say most of these things I believe have already been covered in Matt's summary. So if you want to go on to the, are there any questions with respect to the site plan or any of the changes that we've been making?
Doesn't appear so.
Okay. So here you see a proposed floor plan, convenience store. The owner is still working out exactly, what is going to be sold and the arrangement, but conceptually speaking, this we believe to be pretty close to what would actually be happening there. So there you see the north elevation, which faces Napoleon Drive, the south elevation, which would be facing the housing to the south, and then east and west elevations roughly similar. We think that the connection to the pedestrian path along Adams Dairy Parkway is important, so we have an entrance that faces to the east and the potential there for some sort of an outdoor plaza to allow for that connectivity to the pedestrians. As a facility, we think this is really going to be important for the neighborhood. We've done some demographic studies and looked at facilities in the neighborhood, and there really isn't, I believe, within maybe a half a mile for residences in this neighborhood to walk to grocery kind of items, and so that's really important to the owner. That's one of the reasons that he's excited about this site. This is just an example of some typical signage that we would foresee on the corner Adams Dairy Parkway and Napoleon. There would be a monument sign, and on the building itself, we're looking at this halo lettering of some sort, possibly both internally and backlit lettering. We don't really have, there's not yet branding been established for it, so I can't tell you whether it's, Chevron or Phillips 66, that we don't know.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Great, thank you.
Is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of this? Anybody that would like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir? You'll need to be sworn in, state your name, address.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this case to be the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Leave your name and address.
My name is James Ash. I live at 712 Westwoods Drive, Liberty. I own the 371 townhome that's immediately to the south of the proposed development. So in looking over the materials, one of the things that I do have a question, maybe I could get clarification before I make a point.
Okay.
Do you have a topography?
Do we have one, Mr. Wright?
Yes, so here is the existing conditions, which does show the topography of the site.
Okay. So one of my concerns is building 37 would be the building that I own there, kind of immediately, right there.
Okay.
There's a pretty significant fall from that property down to the back side of my building. In fact, based on what I could tell looking at with a magnifying glass, it's about 6 feet over 30 feet. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and if the architects or if the applicant's engineers here, they may be also able to assist, but it does look like the elevation there is about 915 and the rest of the site's about 921, 922. So it's about 6 or 7 feet higher.
Yeah, and it drops in a pretty steep. And so my concern is twofold with that. One, the 15-foot setback that's being requested instead of 25 feet. When you think about that drop, that brings that building quite a ways back and down toward my property. So that's one concern. I would oppose the request to change the standard 25-foot setback to 15 feet. And then the other is, if you think about, again, that drop, those townhomes, building 37, 36, and 38, are 2-story, and a 6-foot fence that's anywhere close to that drop isn't going to screen the topography from the top of where the parking will be. It's just going to be too short. So it comes down the hill 6 feet up, doesn't really give enough of a screen. So I'd request a 10-foot fence on the backside so that there's enough elevation in the fence to actually screen from the parking lot back. And then my third request is, those are all homes, many of them are family. 2 a.m. is a pretty late time for traffic and whatnot to be coming in. And I know you guys see this all the time, so you can tell those are relatively close to this property. I would request that 5 a.m. is fine. A lot of people get up early and get to work, but 2 a.m. I think is too late, and they should not be open past 11 or midnight. So those would be my comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ash? All right, thank you.
Thanks. Oh,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, I missed you, Commissioner Billups.
I guess I have a question for staff based on his comments. Do we know whether the fence is at the top of that drop or at the bottom of that drop?
It would be on the property line, so it probably is around that 9.6, and it varies a little bit, it looks like, on these contours. So it would be around the 916, 917 foot elevation.
If I can comment, which means the second story is going to be above the top of the 6 foot, and the second story is right in line with the level of the parking of the building. So that's my concern.
Okay.
Is there any reason when we can't bring the fence up? Because it elevates up already.
I was going to see if the applicant wanted to
I was wondering.
comment.
Thank you.
Did the applicant want to address the concerns? Or if you might have can shed some.
Yeah, I'll do what I can. We also have our engineers here, which would be may be better able to speak to issues with respect to the grading and the contours.
Okay.
We did discuss with staff both the setback and the fence. If we can go back to the main site plan, Matt. So we do have a difficulty in terms of fitting the building on the site with respect to the clearances that are required both for the typical vehicular traffic, then also the service traffic for fuel trucks. And so we've already squeezed as much as we can in the north-south direction, and I believe the earlier plans for this site actually turned the building and had it along the west side of the site. We thought that this was a better layout, partly because it does a better job of screening all of that traffic and headlights, et cetera, from those adjacent townhomes. But working from the north to the south part of the site, we really do need the clearances that are addressed right now on the site plan between the curb and the canopy and between the canopy and the building. So in order to restore the 25-foot setback on that south side, it would mean taking 10 feet out of the overall north to south clearances that are represented on the plan right now. I don't know that that's feasible. So I would come up short of saying that it's a make or break kind of condition. But the consultants that we've been working with to help us with the layout and the traffic control have suggested that these are minimum clearances that we need in order to make that work. So that would be an answer, I guess my answer on the setback. On the 10-foot fence, we actually talked about that within our discussions with staff. And our feeling was that with the landscaping that we are providing along that back side of the building, it might actually be preferable than having a tall fence there. But that is really, we're not particularly opposed to a taller fence if that would be necessary and if that would be more desirable. We can also, I may have Mark address issues with respect to whether or not we can change grades there. Maybe we can lift the fence
Once I
by
was wondering
changing
if those
grades.
contour grades that Mr. Wright was pointing out, if those were going to be final elevations as well, or if you had cuts on those.
I'm going to turn this over to Matt, or to Mark in a
Okay.
second, see if he can answer that. As far as the hours of operation, that's really a question for the owner, and I don't know that I can really speak to that in terms of what he's thinking in terms of being open till 2 a.m. and whether or not he would be willing to cut that back to an 11 or 12 p.m. cutoff.
Okay.
So, Mark?
Yeah, you'll need to be sworn in and
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, so help you God.
I do. Mark Sherfy, 5405 Alden, that's Shawnee, Kansas. First, Matt, we'll stay on this slide right here. The large trees, the big circles with the black dot in the middle of those, when planted, those are 3-inch caliper trees, 12 to 15 inches in height. And then the two small dots, I don't know if you can use your cursor to kind of, the two smaller ones in between, those are evergreens at 8 feet in height when planted. So just to give you an idea, right now from the preliminary grading plan, there is a 6 to 7 foot hill, if you will, from the fence line up to the building line. So first thought would have been, one of the conversations we had is the fence line move up to the top, but now you have the trees outside of the fence where we wonder who's going to be caring for those. So the fence line has been put at 6 feet in height, could go to 10 feet, but I wanted everybody to have an idea of the size of the trees. So on the grading plan, if you could go to that for me there, we have not set the building elevation. It's going to have, the problem with lowering the grade is making certain the water doesn't get into these townhomes. We want the water to get to Napoleon and to Adams Dairy Parkway. So we can take a look at that, but we're not going to get 2 or 3 feet of difference in there. We want the water to drain where we want it to go, but haven't done enough analysis yet to see if we can lower the site.
okay.
Any other questions for the engineering side? I'm happy to take those.
Commissioner Fairbanks.
I'm just concerned, I'm glad you addressed the water, because I think that is a major concern. And I would be more inclined to go okay with the current situation if you can assure me that all the water is going to go to Napoleon Drive or Adams Dairy Parkway.
That's where we'll want it to go. Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Billups.
Is there any chance of putting some kind of a retaining wall or something there where we can build that so that the hill is not quite so steep, and put the fence on top of the retaining wall or something like that, and give us a little bit more height that way instead of just putting a big tall fence in there?
That's certainly something we could talk to as a design team.
That might be aesthetically better than a 10-foot tall fence or something like that.
Retaining wall with the fence on top,
Yeah.
and then the trees behind.
And then the trees on top of the retaining wall so that they're going to have the extra height. We've seen that all over town.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You'll have to be sworn in as well.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Abbas Hedri, Designs Inc. I'm the designer that's working with Todd with IDs Inc.
Okay.
14462 Chadwick Street, Leewood. Just wanted to add that one of the reasons that we've come up with the design the way it is and the clearances is based on the owner's consultant, the fuel consultant that has helped with the whole study. And he had indicated that if we do not have the requisite clearances and the efficiency of parking is not there, then customers tend to go away. So if it's not an easy experience for them to come in, park, and do what they need to do at the convenience store and leave, then it ends up being a dead kind of business. So that's what's driven the clearances and the distances between the parking and the edge of canopy. And we've kind of brought it to the minimum that we could go with as suggested by the consultant.
Okay.
And going back to the screening from the back, we would be open to working with staff on what needs to be done to assuage those comments.
Okay.
Right.
Any
Thank you.
questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it up here for comments, questions on the record from the commissioners.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Casey?
Go ahead, Scott. Okay. I was just wondering if we could maybe see where the sidewalks are being added to connect with the path real quick.
Do you have slides for that, Mr. Ray?
Yep.
On Adams there.
So they will be required to put in sidewalks along Napoleon connecting to Adamsbury Parkway. And then they also, this is the connection to the hike bike trail on Adamsbury Parkway. And in addition to that, they'll also have the connection from Napoleon. So there will be, we usually require one pedestrian access from the public sidewalk system, but they are providing two. They do, and staff agrees that the hike bike trail having that connection is a nice feature at this intersection.
Thank you.
Commissioner Peel?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to recall Mr. Wetherill, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I had a question as far as there's trending today where music is played through the pump speakers, or there's news that's played through the pump speakers, or the sound comes on after a pump is energized. Is that going to happen at this location?
There's been no discussion of that. I would say if that's a concern, I can't imagine that would be, from an economic standpoint, a major concern. I don't believe that's where the revenue is coming from. So if that was a concern, duly noted, and we'll pass that on to the owner.
Okay, I tend to think customers think that's an amenity for stopping at that because they get the local news or they get weather forecast or something like that. But anyway, thank you.
Or by the same token, if it's a preference, we can pass that on to the owner if that's something that would be desired.
Well, to me, it's not a preference. I think it would be destructive to, since the station is so close to the residences back in the back, that constant noise might be an issue.
I would agree with you. It's not something that I would prefer, but there's been no discussion of that with the owner. So I do not know where they stand on that.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Any other comments?
I'd like to say something about
Yes, Commissioner
my
Banks.
potential interest. I know that there's a concern on the time being open from 5 a.m. to 2 a.m., but having been working a midnight job before, I appreciate something being open till 2 a.m. this close to residential property on the way home. And I would be more concerned had they not considered the building with it being backed up to the residence and your buffer that you're going to attempt to put in, and that it's not going to be open all 24 hours. So I appreciate that part of it. So I don't want them to think that I'm not considerate of the time in whatever decision I make. So.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the Commissioner Fairbanks?
I believe that the 8-foot cedar trees will provide a pretty good sound buffer.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments
I
on the
tend to
record?
think that the retaining wall is a must. I think the 10-foot fence would be very unappealing. That's how to say that.
Okay. Any other comments on the record?
Chair,
Commissioner Peel?
I have a question for staff. Out of the notification letters, were there any returned, and also were there any letters of opposition?
No, we did not receive any letters of opposition, nor did we receive any return letters.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Any other comments on the record? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the 2 public hearings, and we will consider, I would entertain a motion for item 2, the PUD concept plan, if someone was inclined to make one.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion if you'll give me just a second here.
I will wait for you, Commissioner Billups.
Get down to where those conditions were.
I need some of that music to kill time.
Sorry. I would move for approval of the PUD concept plan, PUDC 11197129, with the 6 staff conditions and an additional condition that the rear fence be set atop a retaining wall so that the total height above the neighbor's grade is 10 feet.
Okay.
So it can be a combination of wall and fence, so that they don't have a 10-foot fence, 4-foot wall, 6-foot fence.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Billups. I have a second from Commissioner Banks. This will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Casey?
Aye.
Commissioner Banks?
Aye.
Commissioner Billups?
Aye.
Commissioner Peel?
Aye.
Commissioner Sanderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Snokenberry?
Aye.
Commissioner Hose?
Aye.
Commissioner Fairbanks?
I
Chairperson Graham?
Aye. All right. So we will send that recommendation to the City Council on December 16th at 6 p.m. is their meeting. So that brings us to the conditional use permit. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Billups.
continue on here. I would also move for approval of the conditional use permit, CUP 11197130, with the 4 staff conditions.
I have a motion from Commissioner Billups. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Banks. This again will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Casey?
Aye.
Commissioner Banks?
Aye.
Commissioner Billups?
Aye.
Commissioner Peel?
Aye.
Commissioner Sanderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Snokenberry?
Aye.
Commissioner Hose?
Aye.
Commissioner Fairbanks? Chairperson Graham?
Aye. That motion passes. That, as I said, item 4 was continued to our December 30th meeting. This brings us to the next 2 public hearings for the rezoning.
Do you need a motion for that, Mr. Chairman?
I don't think I do I?
They don't check it out.
For the continuance of that?
Since it's a public hearing?
Yes. We can do it.
Doesn't open the public hearing, though, do I?
No, just.
Would you like to make that motion, Commissioner Billups?
I would like to move that this item number 4 be moved to our December 30th meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we will hear that for the conditional use permit for Link Media Digital Billboard at our December 30th meeting.
have a question.
Yes, Commissioner
Will
Fairbanks.
there have to be additional publication in the Examiner?
No, if the fact that we've continued it to a date certain means that we do not have to re-notify or republish or repost the site.
Okay, thank you.
That was one of the reasons for the motion.
All right. Next 2 items, public hearings, the rezoning for Cambridge Park and the preliminary plat for Cambridge Park. I will open the public hearings, which is the rezoning RZ 11197142 and the preliminary plat PP 11197143. I'll ask our attorney for the exhibits.
Mr. Chairman, I offer the following exhibits into the record for RZ 11197142. Exhibit 1, staff report with attachments. 2, application with attachments. 3, affidavit of publication in the Examiner on November 23, 2019. 4, 185-foot notification map. 5, names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. 6, copy of the letter sent to said property owners. 7, Title IV Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances by reference. And 8, 2014 Comprehensive Plan by reference. And for the public hearing, PP 11197143, I offer the following exhibits into the record. Exhibit 1, staff report with attachments. 2, application with attachments. 3, affidavit of publication in the Examiner on November 23, 2019. 4, 185-foot notification map. 5, names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. 6, copy of the letter sent to said property owners. 7, Title IV Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances by reference. And 8, 2014 Comprehensive Plan by reference.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Mallon.
All right, thank you. These are two public hearings, one for the rezoning and one for the preliminary plat. I will bring it to your attention that the preliminary plat is a public hearing because the applicant has requested alternative development standards. So if you remember, this is a new code amendment that we just adopted. So this is the first one through. So we're kind of learning how to do this along with the applicant as well as you tonight. So those alternative development standards, rather than being requested through a PD zone or some other mechanism such as a variance coming before you, the code now allows a developer as part of a preliminary plat application, if they're not going to meet every aspect of the code, they can request alternative development standards through a public hearing as part of that preliminary plat application. So that's why it's a little bit different tonight. So just wanted to draw that to your attention at the beginning. This is a rezoning request by Roush Coleman Homes, the developer, on behalf of the Blue Springs Land Bank, who is the property owner, to rezone the property from SF7/PRO or PRO Planned Residential Overlay to SF7 Single Family. And a preliminary plat with alternative development standards to develop 186 single-family detached homes on approximately 60.2 acres. As you can see, the site is currently zoned here. It's bound by the black and white hatched line. The property to the immediate east is the Hoot Owl subdivision, which consists of single-family homes both on the west side of Adams Dairy Parkway and the east side of Adams Dairy Parkway, Colonial Highlands subdivision to the south, and Eagles Ridge subdivision to the west, and electrical substation here in the white area. Property is existing zoned SF7 or single-family planned residential overlay. The rezoning request is to remove that planned residential overlay. The planned residential overlay was established when the Colonial Highlands subdivision originally came in many years ago, back in like 2009, which approved on quite a bit of property. This property, Cambridge Park, Hoot Owl, and Colonial Highlands. It was a much larger subdivision proposed under that PRO, which was about 365 homes. That was approved in 2009. That plan expired back in 2011. Because that plan was, that PRO was put on through a zoning mechanism, the only way to remove that is to do it through a rezoning. So the underlying zoning of SF7 is not going to change. They're just removing the planned residential overlay plan. Again, that plan is expired. This would be the last property under the original Colonial Highlands PRO to develop. All of the others that have developed since that time have also rezoned out of that PRO. So the PRO is no longer valid. Frankly, the subdivisions that have been built, especially Hoot Owl and the plans that have been approved since that time, actually can't be built under that PRO anymore because of the way things have transpired over time. So the rezoning request is simply to remove that planned residential overlay designation. It's going to keep the base SF7 zone. This is the site here. Again, it is vacant. Currently, no buildings on site. Colonial Highlands down here to the south with a number of platted lots. Hoot Owl, which again comprises both sides of Adams Dairy Parkway. Hoot Owl, I believe it's Ridge, which is the western portion of that subdivision, is currently under development and will be probably finally platted and coming before you soon. Home sizes on the Hoot Owl Ridge were about 1,800 square feet. The Hoot Owl Acre side, or west side, were a little bit smaller lots and smaller house sizes. Those have not yet started development. The Eagles Ridge subdivision over here is currently being built. This site is vacant today. The preliminary plat calls for 186 lots. Detached building type would be detached house neighborhood lot. 186 units on 60 acres at about 3.08 units per acre. The preliminary plat again includes alternative development standards being requested by the applicant. Those are being requested for a few minor items, including 3 specific ones. Well, there are 2 lots here on the bulb of this cul-de-sac which do not meet the minimum lot frontage because they're at the location of the bulb of a cul-de-sac and it's hard to meet that. So they've requested to have a smaller minimum lot frontage width on those, which is typically 65 feet, and they've asked for a reduced on those lots, 172 and 174 specifically. The second alternative development standard is that because of some of the locations and shape of the lots, they're asking for an increased lot frontage width that is in excess of the 100-foot maximum on 7 lots throughout the subdivision. By way of example, lots, where are they here? I apologize here. 57. Some of these lots on these corner ones here where it's just a little bit more wide than what's being requested. Find some here for you.
I think down here on the bottom.
Yes, specifically it's lots 2 to 3, 6 and 7, 57 to 60, 73 to 75, 78, 87, 92, 111, 114 to 115, 134 to 135, 146, 153, 154, 156, 165, and 160 to 167, 172 to 174, and lot 176. So basically, because of the way the subdivision is laid out, those lot frontages are actually wider than the 100-foot maximum that is specified for the detached house and neighborhood lot. Thirdly, because a lot of the lots in excess of 30, almost 30 lots, are actually in excess of the 12,000 square foot maximum lot size for the building type of the detached house neighborhood lot, they're asking for an alternative development standard to allow those lot sizes to actually be in excess of what the code or the UDC would allow for those. And those are listed again in your staff report. Oh, excuse me, the ones I listed for the minimum lot or the maximum lot frontages were actually the ones that are in 12,000 square foot. So I got those two confused. So I apologize for that. And then also the final one is that the floor area classification. The code requires that all subdivisions be within one classification of all adjoining subdivisions in terms of the minimum square footage of the house, minimum floor area. Because of the unique nature of the way that the properties around this have developed, they're asking for an alternative development standard to allow a 1,200 square foot minimum house size, floor area, for all of the homes except for the ones that are directly adjacent up here in the northwest corner, 160, lots 165, 166, and 167. These 3 lots here are directly adjacent to the Eagles Ridge subdivision, which has a minimum lot size in that area of the subdivision of 2,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing to drop 1 step down for those lots directly adjacent to it to 1,800 square foot for those 3 lots alone. And then the balance of the subdivision would have a minimum square footage of 1,200 square foot per house, which is in line with the Hoot Owl Acres property here, which is directly to the east of the subdivision. This is Major Road, north is to the left, and Colonial Highlands is down here. Colonial or Hoot Owl Acres is 1,200 square feet as well. So if that may be a mistake in your staff report, if it said 1,400 square feet, I apologize. We did confirm they are 1,200 square feet. So staff does believe that is a reasonable request to try to blend this subdivision with the adjacent subdivisions. The minimum floor area classification step down is only required when you have single-family homes adjacent to single-family homes. The portion of Eagles Ridge that is directly here to the west is going to be townhomes. And so that does not require that subdivision step down. It's only single family to single family. So in looking at that request, staff believes that that is reasonable. And in totality, staff believes that all of the 4 requests for alternative development standards meet the review criteria that were recently established in 403-160E, that the new standards will better serve the public interest, are consistent with the objectives, policies, and land use specified in the comprehensive plan, and will not be objectionable to other permitted uses and are compatible with the adjacent property. So those are the 4 specific alternative development standards being requested. Access to the site will be provided off of Major Road, which along here there'll be 2 accesses, both going to the north. Traffic impact study will still need to be submitted and approved by Public Works prior to the final plat. Public streets will comprise the internal roadway system. In terms of open space, they're providing 4 open space tracts. Tract B down here in the corner, Tract A, C, and D as well. The 8-foot trail is being proposed to loop through the system throughout those open space tracts, and Tract B is proposed for detention. At single-family 7 or SF7 single-family zoning, they're required to provide 10% of the required project as open space, which at 60.2 acres would be 6.2 acre or 6.02 acres in open space. In totality, they're providing 6.48 acres, so they are above the minimum required for open space. We do not have a final landscape plan at this time. This is a little bit different. We haven't had just a preliminary plat come before Planning Commission in quite a while. Most of them are tied to a PUD concept plan or something of that nature. So a final landscape plan would come at the time of the PUD final plan. So what staff is proposing is that prior to the applicant getting their final plat approval, that they need to submit a landscape plan, a final landscape plan to staff, and have that be reviewed and approved administratively, as long as it meets all of the code requirements. If they need to request an alternative compliance, a landscape plan for any reason, or proposing something that doesn't meet code, then staff would not feel comfortable approving that administratively, and we would bring that before the Planning Commission in order for you to review that. So we don't have a final landscape plan at this point, which we would normally see again at the PUD final plan. So we're making this proposal to Planning Commission and to the applicant to have that done at a later time, because at this point it's still pretty early on to be able to really dig down and figure out what trees we're going to put where. At this early stage in the game. Parking for each of the houses will be at 2 parking spaces per unit. Project is proposed to be developed in 2 phases. Phase 1 is on the west side or the east side adjacent to Hoot Owl and includes 79 lots. Phase 2 would be the western portion and includes 107 lots. Street trees will be required along streets, or all streets, including Southeast Major Road. Southeast Major Road is not a large enough classification of a street to require a specific buffer under the UDC. However, the applicant will be required to put in street trees along that road. There just won't be a prescribed landscape buffer or tract that we may see in other subdivisions. So I just wanted to point that out. Sidewalks will be provided throughout the site, especially along or including along Major Road. 5-foot sidewalk along the northern side and a shared use path along the southern side of Major Road. Stormwater detention is provided on site. Developer will be required to install all street improvements, including infrastructure improvements to major road. Proposed declarations of restrictions for the homes association will be required with the final plat. That's one of the conditions of approval. Final plat must be approved and recorded prior to the issuance of any building permit. The rezoning criteria and staff's recommendation. Staff reviewed the rezoning request against the code, section 403030 of the code, to determine the rezoning criteria, and staff believes that this request meets all of those rezoning criteria. In addition, staff reviewed the request for the preliminary plat against the code, criteria for approval of a preliminary plat, as well as the criteria newly established for alternative design standards. And staff believes that this request meets both of those, and therefore recommends approval of both the rezoning and preliminary plat with the alternative development standards that are identified within this application, along with the 12 conditions contained within the staff report.
All right.
That
Thank you very much.
concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions before turning it over to the applicant.
Any questions for Mr. Mallon? Commissioner Phillips?
Go.
Commissioner Fairbanks?
Okay,
I see to you first.
thank you. Thank you very much. I'm curious about the north end of this leg. Is it going to abut a street, or is there additional land north?
Oh, okay. The north end,
I'm
okay.
curious if there's a street there. Here you go.
Up here, there is
Yes.
not a street here now. However, that road would be stubbed out for a future connection to the subdivision that is likely to develop to the north.
Okay, because that is a portion of what was originally Lake, I think it's Lake Village. And it's like, okay, that's a pretty big tract. I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be landlocked.
Absolutely. No, we've provided, the applicant, and through working with staff, has provided a stub out for a future connection to
Okay.
to that property to the north.
Thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
You touched on this real briefly, but I want to make sure we're all together here on this. And we had discussed this a couple of months ago with the last, I think, with Hoot Owl, about Major Road being completed. This subdivision gives us the completed Major Road all the way from Adams Dairy to 7 Highway.
I would defer.
Because there was one piece missing, and this is the last piece of last connected land.
I would defer to engineering. Adam, do you know if this will finish that connection? I believe it. If it doesn't finish it, it gets really, really close.
It's about 403 feet short, and that 403 feet is the portion of Major that's owned by Timothy Lutheran. That, well, I think where the cursor is, that's Colonial Highlands.
Okay. Over here.
Gardens of Colonial Highlands, Phase 2. But there is about 403 feet from the end of, I think it's Tennessee Drive, to where the Gardens of Colonial Highlands 2 will finish their Major Road construction.
So we still don't have a through street yet.
Not yet.
No.
We can only require development adjacent to.
Yeah, but there was some discussion a couple of months ago about, because the adjacent part was completed because the other side of the street was required to do two-sided construction and all of that, and they were going to have to do another piece or something like that, and I wasn't sure.
No, it sounds like it's not going to be fully completed with this.
So still not fully completed.
Still not fully completed. We're requiring the developer to do the maximum that we're allowed to require the developer to do.
Okay. And since we don't have any kind of an overlay or anything like that, is this the proper venue to be discussing any kind of amenities within this subdivision, as far as a clubhouse, a pool, other than just the walking trail that you mentioned?
That's all that it is the appropriate venue at the preliminary plat stage. They are not proposing any kind of amenity for these other than the walking trail and kind of activating the open spaces through that walking trail.
Okay, and what size do we normally, what number of houses do we normally say, okay, well, you need to have some kind of a clubhouse or something to go along with it? I don't know if there's
We don't have
minimum or-
anything in the UDC or the code that specifies that a certain number of houses that you need to put in a pool or a clubhouse. It's usually something that is done from a marketing perspective at the developer's point. We just have our 10% minimum open space requirement, and that open space contains active amenities, and under the UDC, the trail counts as an active amenity to put in there. A lot of the pools and clubhouses get put in under the the wishes of the developer to make the neighborhood more sellable, more attractive. But we don't have anything for single-family zoning that would require a pool or a clubhouse.
Okay. I'd like to see something in there, but if that's out of our range, that's out of our range. Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Commissioner Casey?
Mr. Mallon, with regard to the cul-de-sac lots that are that we're having a change to,
Yes.
I feel like this is something we've seen before, maybe with developers struggling to fit the existing code into those cul-de-sacs. So I was just wondering if maybe we need to consider a CDC update around these potentially.
It's certainly something that staff has considered. We see this with almost every project where the lots at the head of a cul-de-sac don't meet the minimum lot frontage because they end up being almost a pie-shaped lot where they're narrow at the front and then kind of flare out and get bigger as they go back. So it's something that staff has considered, trying to figure out a way to allow that to happen. The request for the alternative development standards is one of the ways that staff is trying to approach this. So rather than having them go through a rezoning to a planned development and have a specialized zoning district just because they can't meet the minimum lot frontage on a few lots, or that because a certain number of their lots are actually larger than what are allowed under the building type. That's why we directed the applicant to go towards the alternative design standards route, because we felt that these requests were more technical in nature and didn't really warrant a full PD zoning, if you will.
Mm-hmm. It just strikes me as something that maybe we could standardize, and then they wouldn't have to worry about, coming to us with this change every time we want to do a cul-de-sac.
Staff, it's one of the things staff is looking at, as well as the maximum lot frontage and having a maximum at that end and the maximum on the lot size. Frankly, the code requirements under the 2015 UDC that specified the setbacks and lot sizes based on the building type has pushed us into a lot of PD zoning. And so we're constantly looking at ways to make that a little bit easier so that we don't have to make these special requests for things that happen pretty frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Commissioner Phillips?
Yeah, one more question, and I'm not sure, I had sent an email to Karen this morning, but I don't know if it ever ended up getting to anybody.
It did not, just so you know. So I ask that you share it again, if you will, or?
Well, I had asked for you to have available a little information on the prior PRO, as far as in this area, how many lots were there before? Are we increasing or decreasing the number of lots? Any kind of information like that you could give me?
Yes, I do have that information. Originally, under the Colonial Highlands PRO slated for this portion, there were going to be 163 single-family lots. It's kind of, that's an approximate number because some of the lots are actually cut off between the property line between this project and the Hoot Owl project. But generally, there were going to be about 163 lots. The minimum floor area was going to be 1,400 square feet.
So it's not too big a departure?
No, we're increasing by about 23 lots.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Mallon? All right, thank you, sir. Would the applicant like to make their presentation? You'll need to be sworn in, state your name and address.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, so help you God?
I do. Excuse me. Good evening, Dave Verney with Schlegel and Associates. With me here tonight is Jay Sawyer and Don Draper with Roush Coleman, and our firm is the civil engineering and land surveying consultant for the project tonight. Roush Coleman, as Mike had mentioned, will be the builder-developer on the project, and Roush Coleman is a builder-developer with a 60-year history. They're a national builder, and this will be their first project in Blue Springs. So, they're excited to bring a high-quality yet affordable development to the city, and they've identified a pretty strong demand for this project, or for this product type in the area. So they're, confident that this is going to be a good addition to the city. As staff mentioned, when we looked at the site, we tried to identify a lot size and a product type that we thought would be a good fit in the area. And in looking at the Eagles Ridge and the Hoot Owl, we selected the 1,200-foot classification for the lots as a nice buffer between the Hoot Owl and the duplexes, as well as being very similar to Colonial Highlands to the south. But the majority of the houses are probably going to be more in the 1,400 to 1,800 square foot range. We identified that as a minimum just to try to give us flexibility, because they do have a couple of housing types that are closer to the 1,200, but just wanted to kind of give the sense that primarily, the majority of the houses in the subdivision will be larger than that 1,200. So I want to make that point. We think it fits well with the neighborhood, again, with the Eagles Ridge project and the Hoot Owl, that we've just got a nice transition, as well as, we appreciated staff working with us through some of these alternative development standards, which is a much easier way to accomplish this rather than having to go through the whole planned development project or process. And, just again, like Mike said, with the layout of the subdivision, it's just on the corner lots, what we're requesting for variances are actually in excess, of what's being required. We're not asking for something smaller. We're actually asking you to let us do something larger, than what the minimums are required. So we think that'll fit well. I think that covers most of my points. Again, I'm here to answer any questions, and the developers here are also available to answer any questions if you have of them as well. So,
okay. Any questions? Commissioner Billups.
I'll put to you the question I put to Mr. Mallon. Is there a reason why you chose not to provide any other kind of amenities or anything like that, other than just a walking trail, just a static?
I think primarily what they've identified to date is the need in this area is for a high quality but affordable entry-level type product, and that's difficult to afford a pool track type amenity at this price point. And so I think they've, at the moment, made the decision that they want to work hard to try to keep the entry-level price point as low as possible, and so are feeling like there's enough of demand for this lot size, for their type of houses, for their floor plans and their layouts, that they're likely able to overcome not having a pool. Time will tell if that's a good decision or a bad decision.
Well, if I could say something about that, when you add a pool and dues, it also has to qualify with their payment, which could reduce somebody being able to afford the home because they couldn't afford the payment with that pool. So I could understand where I'd rather have a nicer house, and I would take the kids to the pool. Oh, I don't have a mic on. Hi.
I can hear you.
Did you hear me?
Yes, that was fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. I turned it off because I have a cold. So.
Okay, if I could follow up, you've said affordable starter homes, and I know I can't nail you down because of economics and things like that. But what are you anticipating as being this starter price point?
I would say. I might let Jay step up and answer that question.
Because I think a lot of us have different opinions on what starting price point might be.
They've changed.
Sure. You want to tackle that one, Jay?
And you'll need to be sworn in as well.
Very good. And do you solemnly swear the testimony about giving this case is the truth, so help you
I do. My name is Jay Sawyer. I live at 3803 Southwest Roundstone Boulevard in Bentonville, Arkansas. Our price point is going to be in the 220 to 250 range, more than likely. And we will pass along savings that we get from from not building pools directly onto our customers, so that we do focus on getting a quality home and getting them into a quality home, and less on amenities, and we pass those savings right along.
Still not my idea of hard to have a true starter home anymore with what prices are. So you're still a little elevated than what a starter home is, I would say.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's
not
and that's
a
what we have
starter.
seen in some of the other areas as well. Is they call them starter homes, and they're over close to $250,000, and to me that's not a starter home. But
If we could get the prices lower, we'll do everything we can, and every savings that we get will pass directly on to the customer. We'd love to be in the $180,000 range. That'd be
That's hard to
fantastic.
do.
I don't see how we achieve it here.
The only thing is that you go from 1,200, which I wouldn't be happy with, but 1,400 would be. At least we could get closer to a beginner.
And we have plan sizes as large as 2,400 square
Well,
feet.
yeah, that's where we lose everybody. That's where the starters don't come in again.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
and I'll apologize in advance a little bit here. There's been a lot of discussion outside of this public hearing that you can't keep your eyes off of. I'm assuming all of these homes are going to be for sale. You're not going to set up a bunch of rentals or anything like that.
So at this time, it's unclear for us. That's our what we'd like to do here in Kansas City. Well, let me back up. We are a national builder, and in most cities that we build, in Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma and Alabama, sales is our primary goal. We are working to establish a sales base here in Kansas City. So it's projects like this that are going to allow us to get to the velocity to hire the sales staff and the marketing staff that we'll need to have a for sale division here in Kansas City. So we're diligently working to that, and so that's where our minds are today. So it's not we haven't made that determination, but that's where we're headed.
What other determination could there be other than having unless you're just going to build them all and set them up for rent, it's got to be one or.
yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. It could be both.
For us to approve it, for me to prove it, I need to know, is it going to be for sale or are you going to make these rental homes?
We have not
What's your
made
intention?
What do you want to say about that?
It's signed in as well. I guess.
Yes, sir.
Yep, you'll have to.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony about giving this case?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all right.
I do. Thank you. Don Draper. Let's see, 13635 Dove Road. I live in Pea Ridge, Arkansas. Very small community outside of Bentonville. So the desire, as Jay was trying to say, we want to start a program and we want to start selling homes. We want to do a traditional program. We're going to close somewhere close to 3,000 homes this year across the nation, and those are sales. We sell pretty much everything that we build. That's what our program is. So we're working on getting to that place in Kansas City. And to be totally forthcoming, everything that we build right now is for lease. We build quite a bit over in Gardner in Johnson County, and we've done the Plum Creek subdivision, if you're familiar with Plum Creek, a lot of that. We've done Whitetail over in Olathe, and we've done recently, what else? Anyway, we've done several that have all been for lease. But our program, our national program, is for sale, and that's what we want to do here. That's what we're trying to do in this subdivision. Talking about price point, like Jay said, we would love to be 180. I don't know if we're going to be able to achieve that or not. It's going to depend on how much it costs us to develop the subdivision. If we put in $1 million clubhouse with a swimming pool, it certainly won't be $180,000 homes. It'd have to be 250 or 300. And then, like Ms. Banks said, the homeowners are going to have a $150 a month POA due on top of all of that. That's all things that we try to avoid. So it's going to come down to what our lot cost is, what it costs us to develop these lots. And right now we're thinking it's going to be somewhere in the high 30s to develop the lots as per this plan. If we develop it at a $38,000 lot, it'll be a stretch to be at $180,000 on a home sale to make a reasonable amount of money. So It all depends on what we have to do to get approvals here, and what our end-of-the-day costs look like. If we got the costs down on these lots into the low 30s, again, like Jay said, that would be savings that we pass along to our consumer. And, just to be totally forthcoming, we're looking at also the possibility of doing slab product. There's a lot of cost in a basement, and that's something that we're looking at potentially cutting out the cost of the basement and doing some different things to get that home value down overall, the cost of creating that home down, so that again we can pass along the cost to the customer and give them what they want. So we can achieve a similar square footage to what people are buying here today in this market for $300,000. If we can get that at $200,000 or $220,000, I think that's a value that people would be excited about, and that we would be able to sell, notwithstanding, maybe not having the nicest amenities in town or whatever that would look like. So that's what our program is today here in Kansas City. And what I would say is we're doing everything that we can to get to the point where we can sell everything that we build here. So that's our true intentions.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Draper?
I think Mark.
Oh, I would
Mr.
just
Mel?
like to point out from a zoning code standpoint, a UDC standpoint, the city doesn't have any regulations whatsoever that govern whether a housing product is for sale or for rent. We've approved a number of projects over the years, mainly in the duplex or attached category, that could be for sale or for rent. Most of them have actually gone to be for rent. I will say that they are being platted as single-family lots and will be finally platted as individual single-family lots, which would allow them to be sold at some point in the future.
Okay. Any
Chair?
other questions? Yes, Commissioner
Mr.
Pierre.
Draper, the supposed or the projected cost includes the lot, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What is the time between phase 1, phase 2?
It would be as fast as we could build out phase 1.
Okay, before you start building phase 2, will there be ingress egress site on or in progress on the west side of that division or that development?
No, we would not start on ingress and egress to phase 2 until we started on the development of phase 2. So we would put phase 1 in place, and then when we begin construction on phase 2, we would make that connectivity.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Draper. Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm. Any other? Commissioner Fairbanks?
So there would only be one outlet and inlet?
For the first phase, yes.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I would ask if there's anybody that would like to speak in favor. Anybody that would like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. And you're probably familiar with the drill.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, so help you
I do.
God.
Justin Larkin, 804 Southwest.
Speak into the mic, please.
Oh,
Into the
sorry.
mic, please.
Justin Larkin, 804 Southwest Elizabeth Street, Blue Springs, Missouri. Alrighty. First thing, I just wanted to confirm with Mike the requirements on Hudal Acres. I believe it is 1,400 square foot. I know there will not be anything below that, but we do need to confirm that. I did confirm with an engineer. Sorry, that Hudal Acres will probably consist with confirmation of 1,400 square foot homes. Second, I'm glad they went over their building and selling process. As a developer in Blue Springs, we know the costs. Our builders know the cost to build. And so, the work they put in the surrounding areas, allowing rent-to-owns come in, is probably not going to be the most idealistic thing. I've talked to my builders who are not interested in building in areas that have rent-to-owns. And I've talked to a lot of the citizens in my developments and across the street that, to their comment, having a $230,000 home across the street from them that they paid $300,000 for does not help them out in any way either. So, we all are in agreement that we do need starter homes, so I don't disagree with that. I just don't think we need the quality that they're willing to build in the middle of what we've got going on and what's in the plans for the futures of Blue Springs. So again, I recommend you do the research. Look at the homes they've built, go out and see the homes they've built, look at what they display online, rent to own. And again, this is just something I do not think that's in the best interest.
Okay.
So.
Any questions for Mr. Larkin? Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Oh, well, let me finish with if there's anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
You solemnly swear in the testimony about in this case to be the truth, so help you God?
I do. Daniel Holdcroft, 400 Southwest Carson Drive, Blue Springs, Missouri. My question would be, and this is kind of personal, I'm in the process tomorrow of signing papers on the house at the corner of 6th Street and Colonial Drive, a $360,000 house. Do I really want rentals literally right in my backyard? When Eagles Ridge has duplexes everywhere, and 90% of them look like they're open at any given time. So my question would be,
You need to address me and then he can answer.
Are they going to be for sale or are they going to be for rent? Because it didn't sound like he really clarified that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait, any questions before he sits down? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Okay. If the applicant wanted to address the concerns.
So to answer your question first, for rent, for sale, for lease,
but still address.
We don't know. We will be attempting to make them for sale. If we cannot sell them, we will lease them. So I think that's the same thing that happens with every other subdivision in town. When people build a house, they try to sell it. If they can't sell it, they may consider leasing it or doing something different with it. I think that happens all over the United States, actually. So that would be our plan. We will try to sell homes, and if we build homes that we can't sell at the profit that we want to make, we would lease those homes. And those people are generally fine, upstanding citizens of the community that we lease our homes in. So we feel good about that. As far as the rent-to-own comments, I apologize. I didn't say that. I didn't intend to say that. We don't do a rent-to-own. It's either for sale or for lease. It's really very simple, very plain.
Okay.
Were there other questions I didn't address?
Commissioner Fairbanks.
Will you be building these under FHA or VA guidelines so that people can get in with no money down?
I don't know off the top of my head if this area qualifies for that, but if it does qualify, then yes, we would entertain working with people who got an FHA or VHA loan. We don't typically tell our customer what kind of loan product they can have if the home qualifies for it. We kind of leave that up to our customers.
Normally, the subdivision has to qualify before they can do it.
I don't believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe this falls outside of the RD loan guidelines. So I don't believe it's eligible, but I don't know for sure off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Comments, questions from the commissioners on the record? Commissioner Casey.
I think we had a question about Hudal Acres lot, and I just want to make sure we got that answered.
Yes, I just confirmed after looking at the staff report and approval ordinances and plans for both Hudal Acres and Hudal Ridge. Hudal Acres is a minimum floor area of 1,200 square feet. The classification for that, and then across the street with Hudal Ridge, which is adjacent to the larger homes in Willow Tree, was a minimum of 1,800 square feet. So it is 1,200 square feet.
Okay.
And that, again, is a minimum. That's not to say that the developer is
They
not
may
proposing
exceed.
larger houses than that. And oftentimes, we've found that the minimums aren't what actually gets built. Once the homes actually start getting built, they are quite a bit larger than the minimum that's actually specified on the plans. So again, it is a minimum classification, but in reality, the homes that we've seen are usually a couple hundred square feet on average bigger than that minimum.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the commissioners? Commissioner
Sure.
Phillips.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I would just like to make a quick comment. I like the fact that this does not have the PRO, and we're not seeing a lot of exceptions for smaller lot sizes. You know, the two exceptions for a smaller frontage are, you know, nobody can question that that's on a cul-de-sac, that's what it needs to be. And all of the other exceptions that they're asking to the rules are better or larger than what we would require. So I like that layout and that the fact that these are, you know, we're not having to ask for smaller lot sizes and all that sort of thing. So I'm encouraged.
Okay. Commissioner Peel.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask staff on if there were any letters of opposition that were sent.
No, staff did not receive any letters of opposition.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Banks.
Thank you. I do have one more question.
Is your mic on?
It is now. Well, it's the cold thing. You mentioned that you weren't sure whether your subdivision would qualify for FHA and VA. Is that correct?
You'll have to come back. You don't need to be sworn in.
I'm
just
sorry.
So we can get you on the mic.
Yes, I said I have no idea.
Because that's your beginner buyer. And if you don't know, then you don't know your qualifications for the guidelines of building for VA and FHA?
I do not get into the sales side of our business.
Okay.
I'm responsible for land acquisitions and development only.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I just don't deal with it at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question for
Another question.
for Mr. Draper?
Yes, for Mr.
Oh, okay.
Draper.
Don't sit down yet.
I'll just stay up here.
How many units are you anticipating building and selling or have occupied in 1 year?
This would just be an estimate. We haven't built in Blue Springs yet. I don't know what the demand would look like exactly. I would assume around 40 to 50 per year.
Okay.
And it is somewhat of a guess, but it's an educated guess, I guess I would say. So we would probably, if you're headed down this direction, we would probably build through phase 1 in no more than 2 years.
2 years.
Yes, ma'am.
So the other question is, will you be bringing in workmen to complete the construction, or will you be hiring local?
We hire local trades
Okay, thank you.
for all the construction, yes.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Draper? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the record? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the 2 public hearings. And I would entertain a motion on the rezoning application first, if someone wanted to make one.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Billups.
Since no one seems to jump at
No one's jumping.
Nobody wants to jump on this. I will preface this by saying that the rezoning, since there is currently a ineligible, I guess, or expired zoning on this lot, and nothing can be done without that rezoning or that PRO being removed, and that's all we're asking to do here is remove that PRO. I would move for approval of the rezoning RZ 1119-7142, and there are no conditions.
I have a motion from Commissioner Billups. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Fairbanks. This will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Casey?
Aye.
Commissioner Banks?
Aye.
Commissioner Billups?
Aye.
Commissioner Peel?
Aye.
Commissioner Sanderson?
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Stokenberry? Commissioner Hose?
Aye.
Commissioner Fairbanks?
Aye.
Chairperson Graham?
Aye.
9-0.
So that motion passes, and we will send that recommendation to City Council for their December 16th meeting at 6 o'clock. Next item would be consideration on the preliminary plat. If someone wanted to.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Phillips.
I seem to be working hard tonight here.
You are.
Again, as I said, I like the lot layout, which is really what we're looking at here with plats. And the size of the lots, the frontages, everything else, it fits our standard zoning, which is really nice that we don't have to go in and make a lot of exceptions. That being said, I would move for approval of the preliminary plat 1119-7143 with the 12 conditions.
I have a motion from Commissioner Phillips. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Fairbanks. This will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Casey? Aye. Commissioner Banks?
No.
Commissioner Billups?
Aye.
Commissioner Peel?
Nay.
Commissioner Sanderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stokenberry?
Aye.
Commissioner Hose?
Aye.
Commissioner Fairbanks?
I'm going to have to say no.
Chairperson Graham?
Aye.
6-3.
So that preliminary plat has been approved. And that brings us to our next item on the agenda is other business, which, Mr. Mallon, is it just the change in date for our next meeting?
Yeah, I would just like to point out that we had this conversation earlier about whether the 23rd or 30th would work best for the planning commissioners should we get development applications. And lo and behold, we did get a bunch of development applications. And so the 23rd of December meeting has been canceled, and we are going to be holding a planning commission meeting on the 30th of December. We have quite a full plate that night. So I would just say that we'll be here for a while. We have got some good applications coming before you.
Now, the only reason we're going to have that meeting was to go over sign code task force. So if we're not having sign code task force.
Well, yeah, exactly. We actually, there tends to be a pattern where developers like to drop off their plans at the end of the year to see them get approved before the beginning of the year. And boy, if we didn't get a bunch. So we will be here happy and ready to celebrate the new year. And I'd just like to point out it will be my birthday, so take it easy on us a little bit.
Afterwards.
Take it easy on you.
We have quite a few applications coming forward that night, so that agenda will be forthcoming.
All right. Any other business? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, and this meeting is adjourned.